Hello and welcome to Undercurrent. I'm your host, Angela McDonald. It can't be assumed that the rights of consumers are protected. We have the Department of Consumer Protection, but this came about after the hard work of one individual, Rona Oakley. In her 90s, Rona just passed away, and Undercurrent put together a tribute to Rona for all her hard work supporting those who are consumers.
Something really memorable about Rona is that she presents as this very genteel, softly spoken lady. And the only thing that I guess shows the true Rona is this mischievous smile and this glint in the eye. It seems from an early age that Rona stood up for the little person, the person who was unfairly treated.
Rona used to regale us with stories of where she'd come from, her past, but she would also hook those back to the presentations that were being made to the various nominations that had come through in the CP Awards. And you could see from her life history where she had come from a fairly poor background. She had come from an area where she would assist the community, and the community needs were always being put to the forefront. And it was amazing the way in which those, I guess, endeavours that she'd had over the many years were reflected in the people who've been nominated through for the Rona Oakley Award.
Rona's speech, it's often the thing that most people remembered in any given year. They would, and regular attendees would anticipate what she was going to say in her yearly speech.
People are beavering away every day to try and help those who find that this world which we live in, that this sophisticated, crazy world we live in, to help them have an even playing field and help them cope with the difficulties.
Constant approaches to government departments, bombarding them and getting the services in there, because we were aware that the royalties were being paid for education and we were aware they were not being spent in the Pilbara. People, through no fault of their own, find themselves in difficult financial circumstances, for one, or bad legal situations, and you have these people working away in these offices, helping them, getting them out of their problems.
The thing that sticks out for me about Rona more recently is a greater appreciation of the loving partnership with her husband Ron. I think in many ways that Ron and Rona have enabled each other through their life and enabled each other to excel and commit and grow, but always as a partnership. And each has enabled the other to make a special contribution to the community.
I came to think of Rona as a surrogate grandmother. It was so lovely spending time with her. I'll especially remember the time she was asking me about my weekend, and I mentioned I'd been to a Kiss concert, and then I said, "Oh, do you know who Kiss is?" And she said, "Do I know who Kiss is? I've met them."
Rona gave me a platform into which I came and have spent the last 30 years working in the community sector. For the centre itself, Rona definitely was the driving force behind establishing the centre. Many of the aspects of the centre today I can easily attribute to Rona.
My memory of Rona is always wanting to acknowledge the history of the centre and the important people in the function of the centre in the past and currently.
You know, different things going on at the centre. She would come and discuss these issues and find out what she could do about some of them, you know. So, yes, for me too, Rona has been a mentor and a leader.
She wasn't a qualified lawyer, and those who my colleagues were. She wasn't young, and we were still very young. She used wisdom sometimes where we were a little bit fixated perhaps on intellect. And I think slowly but surely we found ourselves learning a lot from her.
The Consumer Protection Awards are named after Rona, because clearly Rona had a passion for equity and fairness. But there was also a lovely element of Rona that was unassuming. It didn't seek the limelight. It's about doing things with determination, but doing so not for the reward, but for making a difference.
Whitewash is a new exhibition by emerging artist Matthew McAlpine. Matthew looks at Australia's colonial history as a form of whitewashing or brainwashing, and it has come at the expense of the Indigenous culture. James went along and had a look at Matthew's new exhibition titled Whitewash.
Matthew McAlpine's first solo exhibition aims to bring attention to the whitewashing of Australia's colonial history and the way it is normalised in contemporary Australia. The emerging artist hopes that this exhibition will create discussion about the richness of Australia's Indigenous history, which is all too often whitewashed.
I'm an emerging artist based in Perth. I graduated from Curtin University with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in 2014, and this year I'm doing my honours in Fine Arts. I grew up in a rural area of Australia, about 3 hours north of Perth, so that sort of gives me interest in materiality of sort of land and landscape, and it's where the red earth used in these paintings is sourced from, so it's sort of adds something personal to the work. The exhibition's called Whitewash. It's produced over 6 months last year and the start of this year. It's looking at the way that, I guess, contemporary Australia reflects on colonial history, and also things that involve with colonial history, such as early white Australian art, such as Impressionist and earlier colonial art. So there's two sort of main areas I focused on, this being one of them, which was the idea of the replica. I'm hoping by using sort of this pigment that directly references the land and sort of replicating the original ones in this work in particular, shifting the focus of the imagery, using sort of imagery that is recognisable, and how the manipulation of the pigment as paint can change the way that's seen. And with the frame, it references that privilege of the ornate frame and the way that they're sort of shown in museums, which kind of tie in with these works nicely, which are made using found prints from op shops. So these are prints of colonial paintings and Impressionist paintings from Australia that have been in someone else's home originally, and using the pigment again, covering up areas and sort of letting areas come through, and the viewer sort of picks up on parts of the painting underneath, and the juxtaposition of the red earth against this print, which is often fading, and the frames that aren't perfect, they have scratches and sort of chips. And that reference to that kind of whitewash that I'm interested in, the whitewash of colonial history, how colonial history always takes precedence over, say, Indigenous histories in Australia. And yeah, that's kind of where the interest for this work. So kind of giving it a dynamic shape and sort of an unnatural shape, and the way that they sort of contrast and grapple against each other, and kind of references that grappling of history that we have in Australia. This work here is a replica of a Frederick Garling painting from Western Australia, and he was sort of the artist on a lot of the expeditions that James Stirling did when they were surveying the Swan River. It's interesting because Western Australia has a turbulent colonial history, and I think changing the way that this is seen, and in the context of this work, it sort of plays nicely into West Australian history and things that aren't discussed, like dark sides of West Australian colonial history, which aren't talked about and not necessarily taught in schools. And I think potentially the works can create discussion about the way that we discuss history. I think some of the interesting things about the works of glass is that the viewer is always inside the painting. Like you can't look at it without you being in the painting. So, and if you're on the side of it, then there's something else is in it. And so you always have to consider yourself when looking at the painting or your surrounding environment, which is sort of an interesting thing which is in play at a lot of the works, and because a lot of them do have glass.
What do you hope will come from this exhibition in terms of yourself as an artist and also the issues of Indigenous history in general?
As an artist, firstly, I'm hoping to have more exhibitions and continue to develop ideas around these themes and to pushing the work so it's stronger. And hopefully eventually, and I don't think the work will do this, because I don't think work is powerful enough to just change the way that we have education system alone. There's lots of things that need to be done, but I hope that in a slight way, even if it's just one person, contributes to the way that we think about Australian history, colonial history, voice to Indigenous histories, and things like this.
This is James Rogers reporting for Undercurrent.
There are 4 cameras hidden around Perth to catch hoon drivers. 7,000 hours of footage has caught 72 hoon drivers. The state government sees this as a success, so they've ordered 8 more cameras to put around the city of Perth. We need to hit the streets to find out if you think this is a good idea on how to catch hoons.
The government is planning to install more Hoon cameras around the state. Today we asked West Australians what they think about this. Do you think that by installing thrice the amount of cameras on the streets, will it actually help reduce the amount of reckless drivers on the street?
Yeah, I think it'll improve it, definitely, yeah.
I guess it's all right, that's pretty good, they should do it.
No, I don't. I think it needs the police force.
Oh, definitely. I reckon if there's cameras, a lot of people look out for them, safety will increase. So yeah, I reckon there'll be a lot bigger safety in our neighbourhood, so yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Do you think that it is reasonable for the government to spend a sum of money on such purposes?
Depends what's the sum of money that they're spending on it.
It's half and half. Like, you do have to spend money, but then again, spending a lot of money on it.
If it helps, yes, I think it's worth it, yeah.
They can put as much money as they want into it and they're still going to be hoons. If they want a hoon, they just got a hoon. It doesn't really matter. Nothing's going to stop them, so... Yeah.
No, I don't. I think the money should be put into personnel and not to technology.
Besides installing more Hoon cameras, what do you think can be done to reduce the amount of reckless drivers around the state?
More police on the road. Because the cameras are after the fact. If the police were there, they could do something about it on the spot.
Stop penalising through double demerits and actually look at some proactive initiatives. So rewarding good drivers, that might help.
Just raise awareness, kind of tell people what they're doing. Like, not only just raising money and putting in cameras, but show them that what the driving can actually do, and doing that hooning driving can actually really affect.
Do you think that by creating a playground for them to attract them to these places instead of the streets, will it actually help the situation?
No, I think they enjoy the danger.
As long as it's paid for by a speedway or something like that, so not out of public money.
It could, but then it couldn't, because it would just maybe encourage it to be pretty bad.
They also feel that by building playgrounds for Hoon drivers to use the place to engage in such activities will not solve the issue. I'm Rona Azman reporting for Undercurrent.
Stay with us on WTV. We'll be back shortly after a break for more Undercurrent. people's voice, the people's choice to make changes, to be heard. That's what protesting is about, whether it be loud or whether it be peaceful. The legislation is coming in with the Barnett government, which is proposing that any protest, whether it be peaceful or loud, and those within it, could face 2 years in jail plus hefty fines. An alliance group has formed and they're concerned about this new legislation, and James finds out more.
Last month, there were protesters outside Parliament House fighting for the right to protest. It was in regards to the Criminal Code Amendment Bill, which seeks to make the physical prevention of lawful activity an offence. I spoke with lawyer Kate Davis to find out more.
The Law Society of Western Australia and the Criminal Lawyers Association and Community Legal Centres Association of Western Australia have all spoken out against these laws, and their concerns are primarily that they are drafted so broadly that they're open for misuse, and also that they reverse the onus of proof in relation to the crucial element of intent for these new offences. And so those are the key reasons that the legal profession have raised their concerns about this new bill.
How will these laws affect just generally the people of WA protesting anything?
So these laws create two new offences. One is the prevention of lawful activity, and then the second, which to my mind is the most serious and concerning offence, is the one of possession of a thing for the purpose of preventing lawful activity or for the purpose of trespass. Now, the risk is that people may be charged before they've undertaken any protest activity at all simply for the possession of a thing. And because the onus of proof is reversed, the police just need to prove that they had a reasonable suspicion the person was going to use that thing for protest, and they no longer need to prove the offence beyond a reasonable doubt.
Why do you think these laws are being introduced? It all sounds a bit Orwellian, doesn't it?
Certainly, a lot of people have been quite creative and humorous in their critique of the proposals around the possession of a thing. We had lots of excellent examples of things turning up at the protest recently just to highlight how ridiculous these laws are. I think the government have made it really clear in their own statements in Parliament that they're bringing these laws in to advance the interests of big corporations like the oil and gas giants who were trying to press ahead with the James Price Point development, and in order to stop protests in old-growth forests in the southwest.
As you said, the proposed legislation is seemingly vague in that it criminalises possessing a thing, which appears to be could be anything. Do you think this is going to be targeted only for radical protesters, as the government claims, or do you think it's going to be conveniently used?
Certainly the government have consistently claimed that this legislation is for activists who are using lock-ons and who are engaging in dangerous activities, but there's nothing in the legislation that targets the offences in that way. So it's open for these offences to be used against anybody engaging in protest, preventing lawful activity, or just possessing a thing in circumstances where the police have the suspicion about them. And so our concern, which is reflected by the really broad group of people and organisations who've joined the Alliance, is that it could be used against workers engaging in otherwise lawful industrial activity, like a picket out the front of a workplace that prevents people from getting into a business would be covered by this legislation. That it might be used against church leaders in their upcoming campaigns around sanctuary. While the government is saying that it's targeted at extremist activists, there was no suggestion that there was ever any violence at James Price Point or at the protests in the forests. So these laws are clearly targeted, intentionally targeted at peaceful protest.
What do you suggest can be done to either stop this legislation or change it?
think it's really important that the government understands the level of dissatisfaction in the community about these anti-democratic laws, and so people contacting their members of parliament is really important. Continuing to put pressure on the government to show this is not the kind of laws that we want in Western Australia is really important. It's also an interesting development to see that Bob Brown has filed in the High Court a challenge to the Tasmanian anti-protest laws. It'll be very interesting to see what the High Court has to say about these, and hopefully that will send a clear message to the Barnett government as well.
Do you have any more comments on this issue that you would like to share?
It's been fantastic to see such a broad range of representatives of the community come together and work so well together. So we've had representatives from a range of different unions led by Unions WA. We've got representatives from a number of different churches, the Anglican and Catholic churches. We have representatives from environmental organisations like Conservation Council and No Shark Cull, as well as the West Australian Council of Social Service. So it's a really broad spectrum of organisations across the community who are concerned about this legislation.
Only time will tell if this bill passes successfully. This is James Rogers reporting for Undercurrent.
Tuesday, 8th of March, International Women's Day. Hundreds of West Australian women from across the globe went to the Perth Convention Centre to receive awards, watch celebrations and to enjoy the beauty of each other. I went along and met some amazing people. Perth has truly come alive tonight at the Perth Convention Centre for the International Women's Day. And there's hundreds of women all dressed up, all looking beautiful, all talking about issues that are relevant to women and enjoying what's going to be coming for 2016. Tonight is truly a celebration with International Women in Perth. So tonight, important?
Yes, very important for a couple of reasons. Of course, it's always good to celebrate International Women's Day, and particularly with the Chinese women, who I have had a great deal of involvement. My wife is one of the patrons of the organization. Unfortunately, she's not here tonight, but so it represents a growing migrant group to Western Australia, and celebrate International Women's Day from a different perspective, not just women, but migrant women.
Yes, and what do they bring to the community in Western Australia?
Oh, quite a bit. Of course, many of them have made the difficult transition from their home country, whether it's China or Malaysia, and that's always difficult and put tensions on the family life, and often the woman has to carry a lot of the load.
Tonight there's some awards being given out?
Yes, yeah. Awards for contribution to the community, awards to contribution to women's lifestyles, and a contribution to the Chinese community.
In a nutshell, what do you think women do contribute?
Well, they keep life going. They keep life going.
What is your opinion on International Women's Day in Australia 21st century?
It's a very important part of the calendar. It should be a full recognition of the contribution that's made by a sector of the community that at times don't get the profile. So it's wonderful to celebrate. But I think we should celebrate all people. So as much as we have an International Women's Day, we need to have lots of cultural days, and we need to just also celebrate being West Australian. So I think it's a very important part of the program, and we should do as much as we can to give it its focus for the day.
How do you compare with that today's life?
It depends where you're working, what you're doing. I'm really lucky. I work in a wonderful organisation with a great equality in it. So I'm very fortunate, and it wouldn't be as enjoyable if it wasn't a fair environment. So I've stayed there 15 years. I love it. And I really hope that other environments, work environments for other ladies, get to that place. It'd be wonderful if we all did.
What do you think about the role of woman as a mother? Is it essential, or anyone can be a mother?
Well, I think communities raise families. I don't think it's just a mother and father, it's the village, and the village is very real. So large extended families are wonderful communities and villages, and for those that don't have large extended families, you need to turn to those around you in your community, and I think that's when you find true richness and true excellence in the social development, the mental development, and the harmony of the family. We are people, we need to engage, and we need to reach out to each other.
What is your message for the young women of today?
believe in yourself, stand up for yourself, and commit to living with passion. And that should forge you through with success in whatever you do.
What made you decide to organise this one?
Every year we organise a Women's Day celebration. So we try to use this opportunity to show women's achievements, award women who made contributions to the community.
So what's the highlight of this year?
This year is similar. We promoting the women and then pursue financial and economical independence. Secondly, and pursue the political and the social status and possessing leadership skills.
How do you see, Lily, the future of women in the 21st century?
Women's social status and will be improved and more improved in the future.
What do you think, how important for the future, the family?
For the family always first. So, and then the woman needs to understand how to balance the life and the family life and their career. And the family life always first.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
We wish to international women have a beauty, wealthy, happy.
You've been watching Undercurrent. Thanks for your company, take care, and we'll see you next week.